Hi, and welcome to the Crunch Guide to the sales section of your Crunch account. The Sales tab is the key place for raising your invoices, recording your client payments, and keeping track of the income for your company. So we start off on the Sales dashboard. From this page, you can see any outstanding or unallocated payments, and you can also check your monthly sales using the chart on the right-hand side. So to begin to raise an invoice, we can select from one of these buttons, or we can navigate to the Invoices tab, and from here we can see any historical invoices, or we can go to add a new one by following the button. So we're now on the new invoice page, and we need to select our client. So we can select a client from the list, or you can add a new one using the button. And once we've chosen our client, we will see that the details such as the address, the default currency, and the payment terms have fed through to this page. So we now need to enter the date for our invoice. If you wish to, you can add a reference or a PO number. And once you've added in the date, we can then start to populate the invoice by adding line items. So the line item is the detail for the invoice, which outlines the charges that we're passing to our client. So I'm just going to put a brief description here. And we can then save this line item. Now you can add multiple line items if you have different services that you charge at different rates. And you can also add discounts to existing line items by simply typing in the discount you wish to add. When you're happy with your invoice, you can save at the bottom. But before that, we have the option to include a note if we want. We can include our bank account details if we've added those in, and we can also set up late payment reminders if we want the system to automatically contact our clients if the payment is not made in good time. Once we're happy and we save the draft, we can see the draft is then listed here on our invoices page. Now, whilst the invoice is in a draft status, from the options we can download a PDF version. We can view an estimate or a quote based on the invoice, and we can also choose to issue the invoice now to make it live in our accounts. When we issue the invoice, we get a preview of what our client will see when they receive it. You see that we have the option to edit this if we're not happy, but if we are happy and we wish to send it out to our client, we can choose to issue and email the invoice. So we can send the invoice directly out to our clients, and you can see that our invoice now shows as outstanding. If we look at our dashboard page here, we can see the sales figures have changed based on the invoice that we've raised. And we will also be able to see that our tax has changed according to the invoice. So now that we've got our invoice, we can see that it shows as outstanding here on the sales dashboard. So we now need to be able to mark the payment against the invoice. So to do that, we can record a new payment from the payment button. Now doing this is nice and straightforward. We simply need to choose the client. The currency will be defaulted as pounds, but if your client has paid you in a different currency, you can record that by choosing a different currency from the drop-down. We then need to enter the method of payment. So here I'm going to list it was paid into our company bank account. And if you haven't done that yet, you can add the new bank account by following the button. And we then need to say how much was paid. So if you were paid the full amount, we'll enter the full figure here. If you're paid in installments, then you can record smaller individual payments against a larger invoice, or you can also split larger payments against numerous smaller invoices. So we're allocating the full amount here, and we're going to save the client payment. So the payment has now been linked and allocated to our invoice. If we look back at the invoices section, we can see that it's now paid and there's no longer anything outstanding. Now that we've got an invoice that we're happy with, if we have repeat work for this client, we can choose to raise a recurring invoice from the options. Now doing this allows us to automate our invoices on a daily, weekly, quarterly or annual basis. And we can do this to set it up on any sort of time frame that we wish. So if I want to repeat this every 1, 2 or 3 months and on set dates, You can also choose to have this continue indefinitely, or you can set a date in which you want the recurring events to end. So you can use this feature to really save time and automate the issuing of your invoices when you have work for a client on a repeat basis. Finally, on our sales page, we need to take a look at how we can make a change to our invoice if we ever make any mistakes when we're creating it. So once our invoice is issued and it's live, you'll see that we're no longer able to edit this. Now, the reason for that is because of the tax implications in creating our invoice. So if we ever need to make changes to our invoice, we will need to raise a credit note to cancel out the invoice. So we choose Raise Credit Note from the options, and we then need to enter the amount for the credit note. Now I'm going to put the full amount here, which will completely cancel out the invoice. So if you ever need to make a change to an invoice, you will need to credit notes, and you'll see the draft. The credit note will also need to be issued out, and you do that again from our options button by choosing Issue the Credit Note. Now you'll see a brief preview, and you can also email this out if you wish. So once our credit note has been issued, you can see that the invoice is now credited, and because we've got a payment linked against the invoice, the system will also think that we need to repay this to our client. So if you've received a payment linked to an invoice that is also credit noted, the system will prompt you to refund that payment. So you will need to unallocate the payment from the invoice now that the invoice has been credited. So to do that, we can go to Edit, and we can simply change the allocation so that it's no longer allocated to that credit noted invoice. So we've seen now how we can raise our invoices, how we can record payments, and how we can make changes to our invoices. So this concludes the quick look at the sales section of your Crunch account.